Hello everybody and welcome back to another TR-08 tutorial video. In this video we'll be looking at the drum pattern from Skepta's Greaze mode, which sounds a little bit like this, and I'll try and play in the synth line. So you get the idea behind that one. So a little tip with the TR-08 is it can be quite frustrating when you're playing a drum pattern and you accidentally press one of the buttons, or you go to switch banks and you inadvertently end up putting an instrument on a step, is just to keep it in manual play if you're not actually inputting or tapping in steps on the sequencer. So with the track Greaze mode, I've got it down to a tempo of 75. So with the TR-08, it lets you go down in increments of 5 until you get to 80, and then it goes to 70. So on the tempo dial it down to 70 or 80, and then on the fine, just put it to 75. Also, I've actually gone into the menu here and done a bit of work on the tune and the decay on some of the instruments to get it sounding a little bit closer to Skepta's original track. Obviously, it's not going to be anywhere near that because he's probably used a professional studio, but we'll cover that later in the video. And then we're going to start programming very shortly, but we're going to have 4 patterns on bank number 1, and then slot 5, 6, 7 and 8, and we'll also have 1 fill. So we're going to utilize the orange buttons here just to make it nice and simple for us. So I'm going to actually make sure this is on bank number 1. So if we press and hold the bank button, press bank number 1, and then with it still pressed, if we press 5, that'll give us bank number 5, which I've already programmed. So to clear this, we're going to clear the patterns that we're going to use. So I'm just going to flick the selector to pattern clear. It's telling us that we're on bank number 1, and you can see that number 5 is flashing, so just hit clear. That should be job done. Let's go to number 6, clear that, number 7, clear that, and number 8, clear that. So we're going to work on pattern number 5 first. So go back to number 5, and then if you flip it to part 1 and hold down the pattern clear button, you can see that this pattern is 16 steps long, which should be the default. Obviously you can put it to 4, 8 or whatever, but let's have it on 16, and then just check, because we're only going to use part 1 of this measure or this bar. So if you go to part number 2 on the selector, hold down the what I like to call the missile launch button, you can see there's 0 steps on that one, so we're good to go. So let's just flip it back to part 1 and let's program in some instruments. So Skepta's track mainly just uses 1 measure with slight variations of that measure. So there's 2 ways to program this in. Don't forget, you always need to press start stop before you program any of the instruments in. So I've now got the unit running on the first part, and I'm going to go and put the closed hi-hats in first. So let's just see if we can do this live using the tap button. So I'm just watching the LEDs. Okay, so that's using the tap button, selecting the closed hi-hat, we've put those in, and I've just missed one, so I'm just going to simply add it in. Now also on the track we have a bit, it's not really a ratcheted hi-hat, but it's on one of the sub-steps. So to get to the sub-steps on the sequencer, just hold down the menu / sub-step button, and if you pop one on 7, it gives us that hi-hat there. So next we'll tap in the snare drum. So if we just put the instrument select to snare drum and get it running, we've got the classic 5 and 13 claps, snare drum. So we'll go, and then we'll put one in on 10, which will give us that. And then we won't stop this, we'll flip it to the hand clap, and now we'll manually punch in on 5, 10 and 13 the hand clap. And then why not stop there, let's go for the bass drum, and if I can get my mojo, it should be, no, completely messed it up. So not to worry, with the bass drum we can just unselect the steps that it was supposed to be on, and I've got it as 1, 4, 7, 11, 14, 16. So there we go, that sounds a bit better. I'll make the mistakes so that you can learn from my mistakes. So what we'll do now that that main measure is programmed, we'll copy it over to number 6 and add, well, in the original Grease mode track it's a triangle. We haven't got a triangle on the TR-08, but we'll add an open hi-hat. So all I'm going to do is, it's still in part 1, I'm going to press number 6, which is obviously blank, and then if I hold down the tap button and get to copy, we'll select number 5 because we want to copy number 5 to number 6, press the start button, and then if we run number 6, we've got that beat. Instrument select over to the open hat, and then let's put it on number 7, but let's use the tap. My timing was a little bit out, but it's put it in, it's quantized it for us. Let's just stop that so you can hear what I'm saying. So yeah, that open hat is on number 7, even though it's a triangle. So 5 is our main beat, 6 is the main beat with that open hi-hat that should be a triangle, but never mind, instrument. And then number 7, what we'll do is we'll take out the bass drum and the open hat, and I'll show you, I might as well show you now. So it's still on part 1, let's go to 7, hold copy, and we'll copy number 5 only because that doesn't have the open hat. Press the start button, that's job done, run number 7. So when you're taking stuff out, it's easier just to go to the instrument you want to remove, so the bass drum, and then just uncheck all those steps. So that's that. I'm happy with that measure. And then for our last measure, if we go to number 8, which is just check it's blank, we'll copy number 7, so press number 7, enter while you're holding down the tap button. That should be job done. And then we just want to take out the snare, which is on 5, 10 and 13, and the clap is on the same. So that just gives us the hi-hats. So I'm happy that we've got all our measures now to start putting in a track. Actually, what we'll do is we'll program in a fill. So you can see I've got this switch here set to B. I always have the fills on B because if you look here, it's intro and fill, A and B. So to get my head around things, because I'm quite forgetful, B is always a fill, A is always an intro. So we're going to select these ones here are always used for your fills and intros. So you'll always have on bank, whichever bank, you'll have 1 to 12 as your main measures, and then 13 to 16, which you can only get to if you, when you're playing, use the tap button to put in a fill, or use the automatic knob to put in a fill. But we'll come to that. So let's program this in. So I'm going to go for slot number 13. I'm in part 1. Let's run it. I've already cleared it, and you know how to do that now. So let's go to closed hi-hat, and let's just put it in on every step. Even that little sort of sub-step there on number 7. So hold down sub-step, press number 7, and that is our variation. So if we just stop that, that's job done. So when I come to use the variation, when I play the unit back, if I flip it into manual play, I'm going to put it on the main beat that's used in the track, which we've put on number 5, and I'm going to have variation number 13 selected. So here you can have 5, one of the main slots 1 to 12, and one of the fill or intro slots highlighted. So I've got 5 and 13. So if I make sure that this measure or autofill knob is selected to manual, when I play this measure, it's only ever going to play this measure until I make sure that I'm on slot 13 where I put my fill, and I've got it selected on B, haven't touched it anyway, and then if I hit tab, the next measure will be the fill. If you sort of want to do that hands free, if you put it to 2, it will play 1 bar of the main measure and then 1 bar of the fill, and then, you know, in commonly in music it's every 8th bar, so that will play through the main measure, and then it will play through the fill. just see if it does it. There we go. And then it will return back to the main measure. So as long as you understand the concept of quickly programming in the 4 different measures there, and then one variation which is a fill, you can play this manually to your heart's content. So if you've got it in manual play, which I always suggest you do unless you're actually amending or programming the drum pattern, we can have it play 5, 6, 7 and 8 by holding down 5 and pressing 8, and then it should just run through in sequential order. Number 6 with the open hi-hat, number 7 with no bass drum, and number 8 with just hi-hats. And then it will go back to number 5. And let's just see out of interest if it does the fill on the 8th bar. So this is the 7th bar. Actually, we won't be able to tell, will we, because it's the same as the variation is the same as measure number 8 anyway. So let's stop that. Let's do just 5 to 6. So hold down 5, press 6, and you select from 5 to 6. And let's have the autofill come in on the 4th bar. So it should play that one, that one, that one, and then so now it doesn't. That's interesting. It doesn't actually play the autofill when you've got more than one measure selected. So let's just check that by just having number 5 selected, and then it should play 3 of these. And then this now should be the variation. Yeah. Okay, so the variation, auto variation fill-in, only works when you've got one measure selected. But if we were to put a track together, we can get around that. So when it comes to programming a track on the 808, if you're lucky enough to have an original or the 08, there's 2 ways to do it. There's original mode or the step mode. Now the original mode basically will record what you play, so you have to be not only accurate but quite spontaneous. Or the step mode will basically you input which bar you want on which measure and you advance using the tap button, so you don't have to rely on getting any timing right or hitting the right buttons at the right time. But I'll show you both. So to check what your unit is currently set as is if you hold the menu button, press the menu button and then go across to program mode and just press tab. So we're in step. Let's put it into original and then just come back out of menu. And then to get it into track right mode, just flip it over to compose, and you'll notice that the rhythm tracks, you can have 12 as selected on the dial here. So let's go to track 1 and let's just clear that. So if we hit play, obviously it's going to play the first track. So if we played that, it's recorded the first track, but that's by the by. Let's just go back to compose and then make sure it's on track number 1 and just clear. So the important thing is when you're programming a track is you don't hit the missile launch button, because you'll nuke the track that you're recording. So before I start recording the track, there's a couple of things I just double check. I double check that it's still on the correct tempo, so let's just put that back to 75. I check that the autofill is on manual, or in other words switched off, so it doesn't interfere with the recording of the track. And I also select, make sure that it's on the track that I want, so it's on track 1 there. Let's put it back to track 1 on the selector and make sure it's still on bank number 1, which it is, and I'm going to start off on number 8. So we're going to bring in the hi-hats, the kick, the hi-hats, then the snare, then the kick, and then a variation, and we'll go on from there. So I know the variation is the same as pattern number 8, but I might want to go and change the variation at some point, and that will change the track. So let's roll with this. Okay, so if I press run stop, make sure it's on track pattern number 8. We'll have 4 of these. That's the last one. We'll bring in the kick and the snare on pattern number 7. And we'll bring in the bass drum, last one. And number 12 will have the fill, so we'll hit tab. So on number 13 there, you can see. Just missed it. But we can go back and correct that. And then on 16, we'll have the fill. Just missed it again. Let's have the fill on this one. Got it perfect that time, and then we'll go for the open hat. That should have been a triangle, as you know. And let's do one more fill. Perfect, and let's stop it. There we go. So even though it wasn't quite perfect with the timing of the fill, if we play this back and then we can forward it to, let's forward it to 10. So obviously the next one after this should be perfect. There we go. So you get the principle behind that, but this relies on you being fairly accurate and sort of sticking in time and knowing what the next pattern will be. So we'll look at step mode, which is a little bit more accurate. Okay, so to set the unit into step mode, if we press menu and then scroll across till it says program and press tab, let's just set that to step, and then important thing to do is just to press bank and then just come out of menu. And what I also like to do is just switch it back to manual play for pattern, and then switch it back to compose, only because it seems to acknowledge then that the fact that you've changed it from original mode to step mode. So let's just clear this track and start back at track number 1. So we want track number 1 as pattern 8, and we're going to get this running. So hit the start stop button, and now this should just cycle on number 1. So number 1 is pattern 8, number 2 is pattern 8, acknowledge that, acknowledge that, acknowledge that. Now number 5 we want to bring in the clap and the snare, acknowledge that, acknowledge that, acknowledge that, and that one. And then we want to bring in the bass line. So you can see it doesn't advance to the next step until we hit tap. So we want it to be on 9, 10 and 11, but then on 12 we want the fill. Acknowledge that. And 13 goes back to does it 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Let's just put 3 more of those in on pattern 5. Acknowledge that. Pattern 14, pattern 15, pattern 16 can be the variation on 13. Apologies if I'm going a bit fast. So then 17, now let's bring in the track, the pattern with the open hat in. You know, the one that should have been the triangle. On 18 as well, and on 19, and then 20 will be the fill again. Acknowledge that, and then don't press anything again. And just because we don't want to input anything on 21, we want it to finish on 20, if that makes sense. So stop that. And then if we go back to the beginning, let's just run this through. So we should get 4 of those, which is measure pattern number 8. Hold on, it's because I've still got it on compose, sorry. So obviously flip it to play, and then we should have it change at bar number 4. No, sorry, bar number 5. There we go, there's the claps coming in. And if we advance it to 12, that's the fill, and it. So obviously the pattern, the track that we've just programmed is now programmed into the unit. Let's just see what happens at 19. This should be our fill now at 20, and then all being well it should go back to number 1. There we go. So you understand the concept behind that. Let's just stop that. So we've put in a rhythm track, and with it in play mode, you can pretty much do the same what it would do if it's in manual play of the patterns. So if we start the track, if we wanted to insert a different beat at measure number 3, we press number 1. It will play whatever programmed onto that pattern, and it will continue with the track. However, if you do it with more than one pattern, like this, it will play measure number 6 as the first one, and then it will insert 2, 3 and 4 patterns. And now we're on number 4, and it will carry on with the track. Can we put a fill in? So let's put number 4 in as a variation, flip it over to fill. Yeah, it does, it inserts that as well. So I won't cover this in too much detail, because you can experiment and play to your heart's content, but the fact is you've actually got a working track programmed in there. So once you've got a track put together, if you want to copy, insert or delete measures from the track, I'll give you a simple way to do it. So what we'll do is, with it in compose, still on track 1, we'll clear what we've done, and this unit is still in step mode, but it doesn't matter what mode it's in for doing copy, insert or delete. So on bar number 1, we are going to put in the main beat, acknowledge that, main beat again, acknowledge that, and now number 3 and 4 we're going to go for just the hi-hats, which was on 8, so acknowledge that and acknowledge that. And then if we play, we should just have so we've got that on 1, and then 3 goes to the hi-hats, 4 goes to the hi-hats, then it'll go back to the beginning, which is the main beat. Okay, but what if we wanted to take patterns 3 and 4, which has just got the hi-hats on it, and copy them to the beginning of the track or any point in the track? The way we would do this is just pop it back into compose, and we want to move to the measure after the point where we want to put the copied measures. So if we wanted to copy those measures before number 2, we'd move it to number 2, but we want to put it right at the beginning, so we need to move the measure to number 1. Okay, so if we hold down tab, it comes up as copy, and then if we press start, it will say from. So we want to copy from 3, press start, and we want to end it at 4, because we only want to copy 3 and 4, and then enter that, and that should have done it. So you're basically selecting, say you wanted to copy measures 3 to 8, the from would be 3 and end would be 8. So it should be beginning and end, or start and end of what measures you want to copy, what block of measures you want to copy, if that makes sense. We go back to the beginning and just put it in play mode just in case. We should have 3 and 4, which was the from and the end measures, copied to the place before number 1, which obviously before number 1 doesn't exist, so it would have inserted them at the beginning, and we now would have a 6-bar pattern track. So if we play this, it's put the hi-hats as bar number 1, measure number 1 and measure number 2. Now 3 and 4 end up as the measure with the beat on it, with the bass drum, and then obviously because at the end we had those 2 measures anyway, they're still at the end. There's no difference. So let's just stop that. So now with inserting measures into your track, the Roland manual always alludes to the fact that you can insert multiple measures, but I've never been able to achieve that. I've only ever been able to insert one measure at a time. So I'll give you a little bit of an example. So if we go into compose mode and we clear this, let's make the first track the one with the bass drum in it, also the second measure the one with the bass drum in it, and the third one let's do just the hi-hats. So that would give us obviously this. So I've always only been able to work out how to take one of the measures and insert it somewhere else in the track. I've never been able to do it with multiple measures, so if anyone knows how to do that, please put a comment below. So if we go back to compose, now I want to insert number 3, which is just the hi-hats, at the beginning of the track. So I'm going to go back to number 1. It doesn't matter so if you have it on number 1, it will put it at the beginning. If you have it on number 2, it will put it before number 2, so it will put it in between 1 and 2. But let's go for the beginning. So I'm going to hold down tab, and I'm going to fine tune it or value it across to insert. Press the start button, and then I want to insert number 3, so I'll do that, and it's done. So if we put it back into rhythm track play, you can see the first one is inserted from number 3, and then obviously you'll get the 2 bars of the kick drum, and then what was number 3 now becomes number 4. So it's taken number 3, popped it into the beginning, and slotted everything across. So as I say, I've only ever been able to do that with one measure, but if you find out a way to do it with multiple measures, the manual is not clear at all, please comment below and let me know. Okay, so with delete, this seems to work a little bit better than insert. So if I go to compose, I clear it, and then I'm going to tap in 4 of the kick drum and 4 of just the hi-hats and the snare and the clap. Brings us up to 8, and if I put it into play, obviously that will give us 4 of measure number 5 and 4 of measure number 7. If I wanted to delete the last 4 bars, which is from 5 to 9, 5 to 8, if I go to compose, I want to delete from number 5, hold down tab, go across to delete, press start, and it goes from 8. So 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll get my maths right in the end. And do that. That's activated the delete. So if we go back to play, it should only be 4 in length, and it's the first 4. So if we look at it on the step sequence there, we had 1 to 4 of measure 5 and 5 to 8 of measure 7, and we deleted from 5 and then activated the delete and set the last measure as 8. So deleted from 5 to 8, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's enough of that. We've come to the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and that I haven't gone too fast. I will be uploading more videos on the TR-08 and some of the other ROLAND boutique units. So if you've liked what you've seen, please don't forget to like, hit the subscribe and notification button, and I will see you next time.